There was one book in particular that came out in the middle of my childhood, which was The Mysteries of Harris Burdick by Chris van Allsburg, which was a series of very mysterious black and white drawings. And what I liked the most about this book is it didn't actually have a story in it. It was kind of encouraging the reader to come up with their own story, like a book of illustrations without text. And even now as an adult artist, I still think about that book a lot when I'm conceiving new work. And then there were other books such as this one, which I have a copy of, The Headless Horseman Rides Tonight by Jack Prolatsky, illustrated by Arnold Lebel, and I got this out of my local suburban library compulsively as a kid. And I can't remember what age I was, but I found the illustrations extremely appealing. They're drawings of mummies and vampires and spectres and giants and sometimes invisible monsters. And there was something about the fine black and white line work and the very claustrophobic atmosphere of the book that I found compelling, and the writing was also very good. There's always that mixture of humour, a little bit of darkness, and just the dreamlike strangeness that I liked about reading books. I often write in small notebooks which are the exact same places I draw, so there's a mix in my sketchbooks of writing and drawing. This is like one of quite a few sketchbooks that were related to the book The Rules of Summer, or Summer as the working title was. Most of my writing process, and I include drawing as a kind of writing process because you're putting little pictures together in sequence, it is based on doodles. So this is a form of writing for me. Small little pictures, one following another, with sometimes sentences added to create a verbal link. And then, like my writing is often in this bullet point form because I don't think necessarily in terms of sentences and paragraphs. And sometimes the writing for me, a single word, okay, that's a text. It's quite evocative, powerful text like summer. So the process for me is whatever is easiest and quickest. So in some cases, it's easier to write Victorian street scene than draw it, because it's a real quick sentence to write. And in other cases, if it's like like say an atmospheric effect, like a certain cluster of storm clouds, it's better to draw it. Writing just a cluster of storm clouds isn't going to quite get what's in my mind. So it's about accurate note making while the ideas are coming, and then later on I can revisit and I can look back and say, okay, that's what I was thinking. And also I can go back to older versions of the same idea, because often when working, things don't get better, they get worse or they lose their meaning. And then I can go back to the earlier sketches and have a look and go, oh, that's what I meant to say, and that's the feeling I was trying to get. The relationship between dreams and waking work is very interesting. On one hand, dreams, like real dreams, are far more creative than anything I do in my waking life. Like, obviously, everyone would love to record their dreams and review them because they're just so weird, unbelievably weird and unbelievably creative. On the other hand, they're quite lacking in meaning, I find. Emotional meaning is there, but conceptually they're all over the place. And that's one reason why if you start talking to people about, telling people about your dreams, it's one of the most boring conversations you can have. For some reason, it just does not engage another person. And so there is a real problem there because art is ultimately communication between people. What I do like to get to is to work almost in the other direction and try to start with waking life and the influences of waking life and our conscious thoughts and our struggle to draw meaning from everyday experience, and sort of move those increasingly towards the atmosphere of dreams. So I love it when a painting of mine looks like a dream, but because it started off in a more conscious place and has an editorial process in which, in the act of drawing, I'm looking for meaning and whatever that is, and trying to nail it to the page, that you end up with something that has a lot of interesting concepts behind it that are communicable. But at the same time, it has the emotional impact of a dream, because dreams can be really, powerful. You don't understand what they're about, but you feel it. So images such as the rabbits, for instance, it's full of all sorts of references to post-colonial history and different things that people have written about European and Aboriginal experience. But ultimately, when it comes to the final artwork on the page, it's like a weird dream. And all of that stuff, all of that textual stuff falls by the wayside to get closer to what it feels like. So you can read a lot about post-colonial history and understand it, but I'm more interested in what did that feel like? What did that experience of invasion feel like? And that's where the dream atmosphere I find is very useful. There can often be this misconception that an artist has an idea that's like an ephemeral, nebulous thing, a thought that's floating in air in their mind, and then that is translated into work. Sometimes that happens, but more often than not, the idea comes simultaneously with the work. The act of moving your hand to create the mark is the same as the thought. And in the past, I've likened it to a bird singing, where the bird doesn't think about the song and then does it. The song is happening through the act of singing, so the thinking is in the throat of the bird. It's when the action and the representation becomes its own reality. I think I started off by thinking that as an illustrator, you're meant to show people things. Like, let me tell you about this. I'll show you what it looks like. And now that I'm older, I just think it's not really about that. It's about providing something that's going to trigger the imagination, and so we can think about it together. I'm not telling you anything. And in fact, I'm not an expert on anything, so that's just as well, because I don't really have anything so important to say. But I'm very good at pointing at things and saying, this is interesting, let's think about it together. I don't quite get it entirely. It's just like with this illustration of the rabbits and its reference to a certain period of Australian history. I don't really understand it, but I can see the strangeness of it, and let's just stop and think about that. We don't even have to interpret it if we don't want to. We can just enjoy it for its weirdness. If you get nothing from a book like The Rabbits, it should at least be that. Isn't history a strange thing? And isn't the imagination strange, and aren't people weird?